Hello, today we are back for a new episode of Women in Classical, and today I have the pleasure of having the absolutely wonderful Jess Gillam with me. She's a saxophonist I'm sure all of you know her already, but for those of you who don't, she's a saxophonist. You are from Cumbria?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Where I was just a few days ago, and you were in the final of the BBC, did I get that right?
Yeah, BBC Young Musician.
BBC Young Musician, and since then you've done absolutely amazing. I was just in, and what I found really admiring is the fact that you're a musician, but you're also a presenter. You're presenting at the proms, just to try and out, which I find absolutely incredible, managing those two careers together. But we'll get to that very soon. I wanted to start with kind of how did you get into music, your beginnings, and at what moment you switched from, or maybe it was right at the beginning, of thinking this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Well, it's funny, I first picked up a saxophone when I was 7, and I hadn't planned to try lots of different musical instruments. I was going to work with my dad every week. He taught at a carnival centre, and he's a percussion player, he's a drummer, in like an indie rock band originally, but he taught these samba drums, and I went along with him, and there you could do anything. You could do dance, stilts, costume making, percussion, and I'd tried all of those and was terrible, and then turned to the saxophone. And I fell in love with the sound, really, at that. I think I was lucky to make a sound straight away. Yeah. But yeah, I just loved it.
And so as soon as you started the saxophone, did you decide that you wanted to kind of become a musician and do it as a career, or did you start just having fun at the beginning?
Yeah, it was all fun.
Now, but
yeah, everything at the beginning was fun. I don't think there was a definite moment where I thought, okay, this is the rest of my life. I don't think I'd really considered many other things. Yeah. But I can remember kind of particular points that felt like turning points where you have to make the decision between a party and practice, or you have to make the decision between, I loved writing and English, and I kind of had to think, okay, well, if I want to kind of do the saxophone, then I know I need to spend a lot of time on that. Yeah. But I don't think there was a specific moment where I thought this is a career. I thought this is just what I need to do, and I loved it. Yeah.
And when you went into the final of the BBC, I'm guessing that obviously kind of probably changed your life quite a bit. Like, how did you, how old were you when that happened?
I was 16.
16, so it's really young, and I mean obviously it's BBC Young Musician, but how did, because that's also the time where you do A levels and when you're at school, how did you kind of cope with that big switch and suddenly a lot of attention, a lot of media and concerts and all of that coming all together?
Yeah, it was a big switch. I'd done it 2 years previously and got to the woodwind final, so that was when I must have been 14, 15, that kind of age. And then spent the 2 years between the two competitions kind of really focusing on sound and developing, so that I was kind of in a way prepared. And I actually stopped doing my A levels. I left school and thought, okay, I just know I love music. This is what I want to do. And it was a big switch, but in a way I just tried to make the most of every opportunity and enjoy it, because at that age you're still kind of at the age where you're not really thinking too much about anything. You're just kind of going out on stage and enjoying it. And you can feel the pressure, and there definitely was some pressure, but it was mainly just, I can't believe I'm doing this. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's really nice though as well. I think also to see, the fact that you went to the final and then you went back 2 years later, and like that you went even further, and that's really nice to see, because I think a lot of the time. And that's one thing we talked about in previous interviews, but a lot of people kind of get discouraged quite, after the first first go at something, and then they think, oh, that didn't work out, and kind of give it up. And it's really nice to see, that actually to get somewhere, usually you've got to, do it several times sometimes to actually get to where you want.
Yeah, it's so true, and that's where all the learning happens when you make a mistake. It's like David Bowie says, to have a good week, he needs to have made 3 mistakes a day. It's like everything, the whole of living and being a musician is about kind of like building up resilience. And we're in a kind of life with music where we'll never be able to complete it, or we'll never be able to get it right. We'll never walk off stage and think, yes, I nailed it, that was brilliant. Nothing can ever be perfect. And that's the beauty of it. The beauty of it is that you do get to do things a few times and learn with things, live with things, and be part of this kind of breathing thing that is music. It's not static. So it's going back to something and having knockbacks, I think, is part of the beauty of being in music. Yeah, absolutely. It's not always enjoyable.
No, there's ups and downs. I know you have many already at such a young age, but if you could pick like a few highlights of your career so far, which one would they be?
I think playing at the last night of the Proms was definitely a highlight of being on the stage of the Royal Albert Hall and being in that kind of such a prestigious concert and atmosphere. But usually it's the really small things that are the highlights. So at the moment I'm working with an ensemble, and it's a group of 8 of us, and they're like my band. And we work together, and being able to collaborate and play music with friends, that is an unbeatable feeling when you're on stage and there's that kind of love on stage, and you're all in it together and working towards the same thing, and on and off stage you've kind of got the same energy. So I have kind of getting to the point where I've got people around me who I really love and who I really want to work with. I feel really kind of proud of that, and like it changes how you play on stage so much.
Yeah, of course. Like I think the atmosphere that you've got on stage, and especially if you're quite close to the people that on stage, it makes a huge difference.
But other highlights are like playing to a room of 7-year-olds and seeing them maybe hear live music for the first time, and when you see those kind of sparks in their eyes, and you might play something either very beautiful and they'll just react instinctively and inherently, or you play some kind of fast passage and say, react how you like, and they'll be up on their feet dancing around, and you think, yes, that's what music does.
It is. It's nice to see that kind of like pure reaction to music. And I would like to go on the part which is basically challenges. Challenges, I think, just generally as a musician, but also challenges as a woman in the music industry. I think it'd be lovely to kind of hear your side of things on what have been the challenges for you, how you've coped with them, how you are coping with them, and obviously you've got like a double career with the presenting and performing. Yeah,
that I think one of the hardest challenges of being a musician or being in any profession is balance. And for me, I do have those kind of 2 strands. So with the performing, the practice can't drop. The being on top of the technique and the instrument can't fall by the wayside. And that has to be kind of, for me, front and center of things I do. So kind of keeping on top of that is difficult, as well as, TV and radio, which I love, because for me, I'm trying to do the same thing through those both those channels. I'm trying to communicate and share the joy of music with people, either through the microphone or the saxophone. But with the microphone, you can kind of do that anytime. You can research anytime. Saxophone, I've got to be focused, and in the zone. But with kind of general challenges, I think imposter syndrome, feeling like
we all know it. We all have it.
We all have it. Yeah, and kind of playing an instrument that's slightly on the fringes. The saxophone is known mainly as an instrument in the jazz world, and blues and dance music and rock and pop, and coming into a classical, but not really a full classical world, because I kind of do a little bit of a mix of things. So feeling like I'm doing that with integrity and authenticity, while still trying to, kind of find a place and find a path, because there wasn't necessarily a path to
it's
follow.
hard when you make your own new place somewhere.
And it can be a beautiful thing, but it can be really hard.
Absolutely. And how did you get into as well presenting then? Because obviously you started with the performing, and what kind of drew you to it? Because I think that's one thing we share in common. For me, it was with social media, and it kind of brought that part of me. I thought, I really like actually talking and presenting things and having discussions and stuff. But how did you get into it?
Well, it was actually after I'd played in BBC Young Musician. I think I just must have talked so much, because I talk all the time, and I'm really interested in people. I'm always asking people questions, and I want to know what their story is, where they've come from, what makes them happy, all of that kind of thing. And I think I must have done that there, because they said, we think that you might be great at this, and
Yeah.
wondered if you wanted to kind of try presenting a podcast about being a young musician. And it wasn't anything that had ever really crossed my mind. You know, I was so saxophone focused, and I thought, okay, I'll try it. So I did it with two friends, Sam and Zeynep, and we interviewed musicians, a different musician every week, about a different aspect of life as a musician. And it was amazing. I learned so much, and I loved it. I just loved being able to kind of find out about people and be interested, and it grew from there. Really.
Oh, it's been also wonderful, obviously, seeing you present, and then obviously presenting the BBC Proms. That's absolutely huge. Yeah, and it must be strange being like going from being on the stage to then presenting, I guess, in the same hall. But yeah,
it is. Yeah, and you know both sides of it so well, and it kind of, in a way, it helps because I kind of know what's going on from all
side.
angles. Yeah, and you can imagine what the feeling is on stage and try and communicate that, and then alternatively, when you're on stage, you can kind of imagine what's going on with cameras, and it makes you feel a little bit more comfortable. But they are very different things, but both very enjoyable. Yeah.
And before I move on to the next question, just on I guess on the challenges part, obviously when you're you have attention, maybe press, social media, etc. I guess you have always kind of judgment around you, and that's something that we can't really escape from, and I think we all get it. And I think that's sometimes something that we struggle with as humans, to be honest, but as musicians as well. As you said, like kind of imposter syndrome of always, how would you say that, you kind of coping with all of that kind of, I guess, people seeing you and maybe, talking around, and is that something that's affecting you, that's affected you, or that?
Yeah, it is interesting because with the kind of music that we play and the kind of role we play in the ecosystem, a lot of the time we're kind of playing one side of a triangle. So we've got the audience, the composer, and the performer. And in many circumstances, our job is to kind of tell the story of someone else to a different part, and we've kind of got to keep that relationship active. So when you do get that kind of judgment that you say, you kind of feel like it's everything, because you've put all of your time and all of yourself into making sure that you try and do that part of your triangle to the best of your ability. And I think for me, it's about kind of realizing that it's all right to take up space, and it's all right to have your own ideas about something, and to have confidence in those, because sometimes it can feel as though, no, this is how it's been done forever, and so to do something different would be disrespectful or wouldn't be a good idea. But we need people to do things differently. We need people to be creative, and so many composers, musicians, people have been on the edges of things, and that's where interesting things happen, when you're not quite sure what the path is, or what the way is, or what the norm is, and that's where we can kind of move forward and find new ways of doing things. But to be in that space, sometimes, I'm not saying I'm one of those people who pushes things forward, but to be in that space where it isn't quite a kind of known path or a well-treaded path, it can feel a bit daunting, and it can come with, you shouldn't be doing that, why would you be doing that, why would you be playing that music, why are you playing that in that way? But then it also can open up a whole kind of new way of looking at things, and I think it's kind of holding on to that this is bringing joy to a lot of people, or it's a kind of, I remember listening to Phoebe Waller-Bridge talk about it. She was talking about the fact that she was going off to study, I think it was acting or writing. She was saying she has a reason to be there as much as anyone else, and that's the hard thing to remember. It feels like this whole group of people who are kind of this mysterious group of people, and we're going against it. But really, we're all individuals, and everybody has their own views. So I think it's just a long-winded way of saying, have your own voice and kind of don't be afraid to take up the space.
Yeah, I mean, I think like, firstly, it's wonderful what you're doing, but I think it's amazing to see that, how like courageous and bold you are with all of your choices. I mean, you started by saying, just the fact that, for example, you decided to actually just focus on the saxophone when you were 16. I mean, that's, it's not something that a lot of people would have the courage to do. And even just now, going into a path that's not been created for you beforehand, that's, that takes up a lot of courage. Who have been your role models, and who've kind of shown you the path that you wanted to take, and kind of given you the courage of going there?
All kinds of people, really. Saxophone players, there was a player called Barbara Thompson, and she sadly passed away recently, but she was a real pioneer and trailblazer for, I think, females in saxophone. Weirdly, Lisa Simpson, she's not a real person, but she is kind of a real person, cartoon character, you know, a young girl playing the saxophone. She was a bit of an icon. Also, in many ways, my friends and family, having people around you who you can be inspired by. And my mum and dad have an incredible work ethic. They're really hard workers and they have been so supportive and encouraging. And then friends, it's always, you know, when you have friends who have a similar passion and you can see the work that they're putting in or the love that they're putting in, more importantly, I think they've been kind of the main people.
Great. And I mean, we're both still very young, so, but if there was like, I don't know, one or two things that you kind of wish to have known before doing everything that you're doing, or that you've learned and that you thought, oh, maybe it would have been good to know that before, what would it be?
Oh, that is a great question. To have known before, I think similarly to what we were saying, to know that it's okay to do things differently, or to know that it's okay to be yourself, which is the hardest thing to know, because to figure out what that is
really hard.
A lifetime's work.
Absolutely, and I think it's not always made easy for us within, you know, institutions, and, you know, just because of the way it is, because of course we all follow the same classes and we all kind of have to fit in that box, and it's not easy to then find your true self and just have, as we said, the courage of pursuing that, really.
And most people have something that they want to say, generally, something that they stand for. And I think when we can encourage each other to work out what that is and kind of work out our own missions, which sounds quite grand, but really just kind of what we're about. And then when we can try and help the kind of next generations do that and think just kind of as themselves and for themselves, I think it's special when we can kind of pass that on. Yeah,
no, I agree. I think it's been, for me, it's been great to actually, you know, when you start speaking about these things, because actually there's not really often a space to really chat openly about these, you know, about these things. And I think also, I guess one thing, for me anyway, one challenge as a musician was the fact that we're quite often alone in the practice room. We're alone, and that's most of our time, really. And obviously when sometimes you've got people on stage with you, which is great, but it's not always, you know, we play music together, it's not always going to be open kind of chat about that and about, you know, finding that. And it's definitely something I felt when I was studying. It's you kind of think that you're alone struggling with your own stuff, when really it's like everybody kind of goes through that. So it's been really great kind of having your side on things. Thank you so much for spending time and sharing all of that with me.
Oh, thank you so much. Lovely to talk to you.